Welcome to Life L'Chaim. On today's program, host Lee Lazerson talks with author Andrew Bostom about his controversial new book, Iran's Final Solution for Israel, The Legacy of Jihad and Shi'ite Islamic Jew Hatred in Iran. We'll return right after these messages.
With us in studio today is Andrew Bostom. Andrew, your new book is Iran's Final Solution for Israel, The Legacy of Shi'ite Islamic Jew Hatred in Iran. Andrew Bostom, welcome back to Life L'Chaim.
Thanks for having me, Lee.
Certainly Iran's final solution for Israel. There's no coincidence and what that term means and how it was used by Hitler against the Jews and the killing of 6 million Jews during World War II. Why this title?
Well, it's just a reflection of the repeated, almost ad nauseum now, I would say, threats and rhetoric of the Iranian regime, of their surrogates, for example, Hezbollah. It's evolved from the more benign-sounding metaphor that Ayatollah Khomeini used to use, which is that all the Muslims of the world should gather on the borders of Israel with a cup of water and just wash it away, to much more, violent burning imagery, and they'll use the word Holocaust, whether it's by missiles with nukes or just missiles without nukes, repeatedly through multiple administrations now in Iran. So I think it's long overdue to take this threat seriously.
Your book is extremely well documented, and it centers around the recent nuclear agreement with Iran, the P5+1 agreement with Iran, and with all the information that's there about it, why do you call that agreement, my term, fraudulent, unable to work? Why do you characterize it that it's an amazing failure?
Well, within really a day of when the agreement was made public on November 24th in 2013. There was this really unusual consensus by people who probably don't agree much about anything. The Iranian and Russian foreign ministers and Benjamin Netanyahu. And they all agreed that Iran's nuclear enrichment program, which is ultimately the way you will get to a nuclear weapon, would continue apace. And so that, to me, was a terrible omen from the beginning. In fact, the only outlier was the Obama administration and Secretary of State Kerry, who insisted that, no, they had curtailed enrichment. And in fact, as things have evolved since the agreement was announced, it's very clear that all of Iran's infrastructure for creating enriched uranium, they didn't even deal with the plutonium facility. That's not going offline. Is going to be left intact as a result of this agreement. Also, there was no consideration of Iran's ballistic missile program. That wasn't even part of the negotiations as they stand to this day. In addition to which, to detonate a nuclear device, you have to have explosives. And there's a facility that Iran has developed for testing such explosives, triggers for nuclear devices in Parchin. That's not part of the agreement. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a very, very dangerous agreement. And one last thing, even the International Atomic Energy Association, which would have to monitor, admitted that cameras are not in place that are adequate for monitoring, and that there's an onerous nature to this kind of monitoring. You really would have to know where every facility was and be monitoring the level of enrichment almost on a daily basis. That's a logistical nightmare under the best of circumstances.
When this agreement first came out, though, it was heralded as just a huge step forward as Iran, that all the work that's been done by this administration, by the Obama administration previously, led to this moment. And a huge watershed agreement that was obviously going to build towards a stronger agreement down the line, which, as you write in your book, just ignores so much history that deals with radical Islam and deception, So explain why you knew it was fraudulent and many others knew it was fraudulent from the beginning, yet so many people supported it when it came out, when it came out and existed today.
It's fraudulent on so many levels. So even at the level of apart from the ideology, apart from the history of Iran, apart from Iran's treatment of its Jewish population, apart from its threats on the modern state of Israel, and this is what I get into in the book, is that I alluded to some of the fundamental flaws in the agreement itself, and the apologetics about that. But also, of course, the issue that you're getting at is the idea that we are supposed to ignore the doctrinal and historical context. And an Iranian analyst was interviewed in a very revealing interview within a few weeks of the agreement being brokered, and Middle East Media Research Institute translated what he was saying. And basically what he was saying is that the Iranians had essentially created a Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah situation, which is this temporary armistice that Muhammad engaged in with the Quraysh tribe at the time, allegedly, according to Islamic doctrine. And it was to give him a military advantage when he couldn't defeat them. And as soon as it was to his military advantage, when he restored his cavalry corps, etc., he abrogated the agreement, attacked, and defeated them. And so this analyst was saying, well, that's all that this is. He was coming right out and saying that, and that he felt that the agreement was entirely to Iran's advantage, so when you look at what and by the way, the other thing is that Congressman Ross Lettinen has pointed out that you have to get clearance just to read the agreement. She was appalled by this. She said, look, if this agreement redounds to the benefit of the United States, and if it's such a wonderful agreement and it's going to halt Iran's, what everyone agrees is progress towards nuclear weapons, then where is it? Why can't the public just examine it?
Why is it being held in secret?
Right. And then the other, obviously, the much deeper level that I get into is the complete ignorance of relevant Islamic doctrine, jihad, the imposition of Sharia, the treatment of Jews within Iran, in general, within Islamdom, and how all these aspects come together to make what's a flawed agreement diplomatically worse.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break right now. We're going to get into some of the more detail of the agreement, and certainly more detail into the historical text of Islam. We'll be right back. We're back with Andrew Bostom, your new book, Andrew, Iran's Final Solution for Israel. I want to read to you some information that was put out when the P5+1 deal was announced with Iran, and then talk about some of the things that you write in your book. This agreement, this is what was stated on the agreement's behalf. The agreement freezes the most important aspects of the Iranian program for 6 months and thus extends the timeline during which the Iranians could develop a bomb. Iran's most dangerous stockpile of 20% enriched uranium will be diluted or converted into a form which cannot be weaponized. Work on the Iranian plutonium facility will be halted, and this means Israel and the region are safer today than they were last week when this was written.
Right.
And now you talk about in your book, The Final Solution, no centrifuges have been dismantled, and there's upwards of 19,500 of them. Centrifuges capable of uranium enrichment beyond 5% will be disconnected. 10,000 centrifuges will be allowed to enrich up to 20%. And those centrifuges that can enrich to 5% can also enrich to weapons grade up to 80% just by recycling it, just by their process. Exactly. Why is there such a disconnect between those who say the deal is great and your information and others who obviously support your point of view that say it's not great?
It's very difficult for me to understand how you can come to those kinds of conclusions. The fact is that as nuclear analysts of repute have said, if you wanted to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon, you dismantle. You don't just arbitrarily cap levels when the processes are exactly the same. In other words, you dismantle infrastructure. Mm-hmm. You dismantle reactors. You dismantle centrifuges, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the only way to actually prevent them from developing weapons-grade uranium, et cetera. And then all the other things that were left out of the agreement that I mentioned, the triggering mechanisms, the missile launching, the ballistic missile program. While the agreement was being brokered, the Iranian missile development program was in North Korea, talking about long-range intercontinental ballistic cooperation.
Right. But these two statements are so far apart, and obviously they're far apart within the political community as well. What accounts for this this abject difference in belief about whether something can be accomplished or not?
Well, I think it may get at some of what you were suggesting in the previous segment, is that look, I think the facts just aren't on their side with regard, but why? Why are they willing to take this delusive view of a basic agreement? It's because they also refuse to acknowledge the ideology, now, obviously there's an agreement that even these people who I think have misrepresented the agreement itself understand or tacitly admit that Iran was attempting to develop nuclear weapons. Why are they attempting to develop nuclear weapons? Why do they have these repeated annihilationist threats against Israel? That's not even a question that they're willing to broach. And that gets at the ideological basis for the regime, which is a modern jihadist regime, which feels that its hegemonic aspirations to spread the Sharia, to spread Islamic law, to some extent hinge upon initially eliminating the state of Israel. There are deeper anti-Semitic theological motivations within Islam, and this regime foments them, constantly. And I just think that that's another sort of pillar of the denial that you get from these kinds of assessments of the agreement. In fact, it goes across the political spectrum, because even centrist and conservative analysts have not been willing to address the theological animus that drives the regime, and also haven't been willing to come close to being honest about how popular these sentiments are within Iran.
But those who support the agreement, and certainly the statement from the White House, talks about how there's going to be a day-to-day review by the IAEA that confirms that this nuclear processing is not going to be weapons grade, won't achieve weapons grade, and they'll be able to monitor it on a day-to-day basis.
It's even the IAEA has admitted they don't have cameras in place that are adequate for monitoring. There's also been an admission that they don't really have a handle on where all the centrifuges are. I just think that the whole process has been misrepresented. Moreover, the representatives of the Islamic Republic who were involved in the negotiations are adamant that the Iranian enrichment program will continue apace. And the ballistic missile systems, they were very angry when finally Wendy Sherman, who's our arms negotiator, said that, oh, well, as part of the ongoing negotiations, there'll have to be a discussion of the ballistic missile program. Well, according to their Iranian counterparts, that was going to be a deal breaker.
Mm-hmm. Why the leap towards trust then? Well, because I know you referenced this in your book, that in 1991, the current or the previous Ayatollah Khomeini stated, Islamic law exists to serve the interests of the Muslim community and of Islam. Therefore, to save Muslim lives and for the sake of Islam's survival, it is obligatory to lie. It is obligatory to drink the wine if necessary. That means the Muslim is obligated to lie, to deceive, to advance their principles.
Well, he's giving a very encapsulated formulation of the doctrine of taqiyya or kitman, which is sacralized, sanctioned deception to advance the goals of Islam, or in this case, an Islamic state like Iran. And it has to do, in this case specifically, now we're dealing with negotiations. This is also what came up during that interview that I mentioned to you, where the Iranian analyst invoked the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah. He said he was in essence referring to this doctrine of taqiyya. He said when you negotiate with Iran, you lose automatically. And it also reminded me very much of the doctrine that drove the Soviet Union when they were involved in arms negotiations. It was the same kind of deceit.
Well, let's pick up there when we get back. We'll be back. We're back with Andrew Bostom. Andrew, before we continue, let's just define for our audience what a centrifuge is.
Well, a centrifuge obviously has medical uses, but in this setting, it's really to progressively enrich the uranium to a point where it becomes weapons grade. I mean, and that's what these centrifuges are used for. Some lower percentages can be used for nuclear reactors. Higher percentages, which is the same process, can be used to create weapons grade uranium.
Okay. In our previous segment, we talked about deceit, and that's allowable and necessary in the negotiations with the West for jihad to be won. Don't our leaders, this current administration, and I know you even reference the previous administration with George W. Bush, don't they know this? And why does it seem that we don't put more stock in it?
I think that they are attempting to normalize what is a revolutionary regime, and I think that we look at the elimination of Islamic doctrine from teaching in the State Department, in the military even. I'm not so sure that they're the least bit versed in the doctrine of taqiyya, and I think we have precedents for recognizing inappropriately revolutionary regimes, as Roosevelt did with the former Soviet Union, literally in the teeth of them committing the Ukrainian genocide. So this is a policy flaw that I think has deep roots.
Even most recently, there was the U.S. government penalized a number of countries, upwards of 36 countries, for doing business with Iran that they shouldn't have been doing. And certainly some people say that was to put some teeth in this agreement, to give them some additional credibility. And some people say, look, we are enforcing this. Where do you come down on that?
Look, the oil sales are going up dramatically now with Iran. Many companies are eyeing all kinds of investment opportunities in Iran. The rial, which had been devalued before the agreement was announced, is rebounding. Iran, of course, is crowing about all these favorable economic developments. I think we've if there was any effect of the previous sanctions, we're eliminating their impact, their positive impact. And in fact, the other thing that often gets neglected is that at the height of the sanctions, polling data from Iran from February of 2013 showed that even when the sanctions were in place, the Iranian people were willing to withstand their economic impact in pursuit of a nuclear weapons program. 62%, 63%. I mean, it shows you that this is a popular program. In other words, the development of a nuclear program is a popular theme in current day Iran.
In February of 2014 was the 35th anniversary of the Iran Revolution. And in the speeches by the government leaders, by Rouhani and Khamenei, they hailed this agreement in terms of how they won, in terms of how they beat the West, and they got one over on the West. I don't understand why we don't recognize those comments and show our strength in saying that it's over.
Exactly, and this is the conundrum. And Rouhani, of course, went on to make more bellicose threats against Israel. Khamenei, a few days before the agreement was announced, was calling Israel the rabid dog. Repeating their metaphors. Now their common metaphor now. I mentioned the Khomeini cups of water way to wash Israel away. Is that Israel is a cancerous sore that needs to be removed from the region. Rouhani has said this. Khamenei has said it repeatedly. The Iranian foreign minister has said this. And on top of that, during the commemorations for the 35th anniversary of Khomeini really restoring a theocracy to Iran. There were threats by the Iranian military for sending. They have sent ships which they say will eventually be off our coast. So yeah, they're in complete triumphal mode.
So what's the politics of this from United States standpoint? Why, when you look at the litany of those who have voiced in favor of this, they're certainly all Democrats from our Congress's point of view. And certainly they've gotten some military leaders, former people in administrations in Israel's past who have voiced their optimism towards this agreement. What's the politics of this agreement?
Well, it's worse than that. There have been Democrats who've opposed the agreement. They've been called warmongers.
Because I notice on air when that question is put to people, the response is, so you want war. That's what you want.
Exactly. And this is, I find this particularly insidious. Israel has never made a threat to wipe Iran off the map, to create a Holocaust. I mean, these are all the metaphors that have been used for 35 years now, coming out of the Iranian regime. And the fact that this completely misguided agreement normalizes what is a revolutionary state and has the effect of delegitimizing a legitimate state like Israel is profoundly disconcerting. It's a moral disgrace, really.
We got about 30 seconds left. In that 30 seconds, what should be done now? Can you do that in 30 seconds?
Well, I think rhetorically, Netanyahu got it right from when this agreement was announced, that it's a sham agreement, that it will do nothing to curtail Iran's nuclear ambitions. In fact, it will probably abet them. But the question remains, what can be done to slow this program down? And I would have to refer your readers to your listeners to an op-ed by Norman Podhoretz that suggested, unfortunately, the only option now to slow this program down is to do something to attack and destroy it, at least at some level.
Well, I would refer our readers to your book, Iran's Final Solution for Israel. Andrew Bostom, again, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's our show for today. Please be sure to visit our website at tolifelachayim.com. Thank you very much for joining us, and remember, to life l'chaim.